Alright, what's going on, guys? The deep dives into Elden Ring DLC are in full swing, with a lot of people reaching the end, conquering the journey that it presents, and whether you've become the champion of the realm of Shadow or are taking the time to savor your journey, I guarantee there were quite a bit of things you missed, such as, did you know that the word that's used a lot in the realm of Shadow, what we've been calling Scadu, is just a very ancient way of spelling the word shadow. So instead of saying Erdtree, it's just simply the Shadow Tree. So you know how these videos work. If I show you something today that you didn't already know, be sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe for all things Elden Ring DLC. But with all that, let's get into the first one. One of the biggest new lore revelations in all of the DLC comes from Messmer, and the item you receive after beating him, Messmer's Kindling. The description reads, the kindling that burned inside Messmer the Impaler, a dark thing eaten away by a wicked serpent, burns the sealing tree said to be found at the old Rao ruins. Messmer, much like his younger sister, bore a vision of fire. This was a lore bombshell, and there's only one obvious answer of who that younger sister is, the only other character with kindling to burn a certain tree. The idea of Melina being Messmer's younger sister confirms a lot. It makes perfect sense and reveals that the community was right about a long-standing theory we've had going all the way back to the initial drop of the game. There was an old-standing theory that each of the children of the union between Marika and Radahn were represented by one of the butterflies in the game, of which there were three: the Aeonian butterfly, the Nascent butterfly, and the Smoldering butterfly, with the Aeonian obviously representing Melina, the Nascent corresponding to Mikola, or more closely Saint Trina, and based off the pattern, the prime candidate for the Smoldering butterfly was of course Melina. And now, to validate that theory, alongside the introduction of Messmer, the DLC has added a fourth butterfly to the mix, the Black Firefly, and its description actively mentions Messmer's flame. So now we know, it is all but confirmed that Melina is indeed a child of Queen Marika, of the union of Marika and Radahn, and the younger sister of Messmer the Impaler. As we play through many of our favorite games, such as Elden Ring and others, one thought that comes to mind for a lot of people is, how could I create something like that? Well, fortunately, we live in a time where a wealth of knowledge is at our fingertips at all times, and the sponsor of today's video, Boot.dev, is here to help. Boot.dev is an online academy where you can learn the intricacies of back-end development, teaching you how to code in an engaging and entertaining manner. You'll learn the Python and Go programming languages in a way that the team at Boot.dev believes is the smartest way to learn, making sure that you're never bored. So courses are set up online, self-paced, and set up as a captivating RPG game, where you'll be fully hands-on, actually writing a ton of code. So expand your horizons today, and check out Boot.dev using my link down below and code Ziostorm to get 25% off your first subscription payment, whether that be monthly or yearly. And to make sure you actually get what you're paying for, they have a no questions asked 30-day refund policy alongside free demos of every course. So a big thank you to Boot.dev for sponsoring today's video, and now let's get back into it. One of the most popular characters in all of the DLC is Igon the Drake Warrior, who can assist you in the fight against Bayle, and his voice lines are already iconic. And while the voice actor's performance is the most commendable part of it, another reason why this might be such an iconic scene in the DLC is because of its inspiration. You see, Igon's name in the files is Ahab, which is the name of the captain from Moby Dick, a story we'll all be very familiar with. It would also explain why dragon harpoons are a thing, but it gets really cool when you compare the way Igon sounds with the performance by Gregory Peck in the 1956 version of Moby Dick.
Oh, ye whale! Ye damn it, whale! Curse you, Bayle!
But even the names Igon and Bayle the Dread have another inspiration, likely being based on the names Aegon and Balerion the Black Dread from House of the Dragon, with the original Aegon being the rider of Balerion. So some very cool stuff there, and it's really cool to see how FromSoftware uses their inspiration and translates it into their game world. So if you needed any more reason to like Igon as a character, well, there you go. Now here's an interesting one. Did you ever realize that it's always daytime in Enir Ilim? You can pass the time into nightfall, but the skybox will not change. It will always be bright and sunny. You can observe this in real time by passing time in the first rise side of Grace, going up the stairs behind you, and going outside to see the daylight. Once again, it'll be bright even though you pass the time to night. Then turn around and go back down the stairs and take the rise. This will lead you back down into Belorat, and as it should be when you reach the bottom and exit outside, you'll notice that it's actually nighttime. Now I did edit this for time's sake, but you're welcome to try it out yourself, and you'll notice that it does work. But this actually isn't the only area for this to happen in. If you go to Farum Azula, that area will also always be daytime, even if you pass time to night. The only issue there is, Farum Azula is entirely disconnected from another landmass, so you can't go from it to another area without fast traveling and being able to test that in real time. But from Enir Ilim to Bellarat you can. Pretty cool stuff. This absolutely blew my mind. So we talked in the last Discoveries video about how the Putrescent Knight in the files was originally supposed to be called the Knight of the Gloam-Eyed Queen. And as unfortunate is that lore was cut, one of the reasons that may be is because of what the Putrescent Knight actually is. And oddly, it shares a lot of similarities with General Radahn and his horse. Now you may have noticed that the actual creature itself is a sort of slime that has inhabited a horse, filling the flesh and turning the skeleton of the horse into the rider. But it gets even more interesting. The remembrance of putrescence tells us all tainted flesh eventually becomes putrescence, and this clump of it imbibed St. Trina's nectar, which granted it eternal rest. And so it was that putrescence became her knight. The word putrescent means to be undergoing the act of rotting. But the Putrescent Knight itself is a slime organoid made of numerous skeletons. And let's examine the appearance for a second. One notable feature about the Putrescent Knight is that it's missing its feet. A very odd choice for an aesthetic purpose, except when we think that General Radahn in the base game is also missing his feet. The Putrescent Knight also does this weird corkscrew attack, one that is very signature of General Radahn. And if you want to take it even a step further, we can look at his weapon, an arched black blade with two handles, almost as if General Radahn's swords have been rotted into the putrescence and fused together, which would explain why the Putrescent Cleaver does magic damage even though it scales with arcane. Now I don't think the Putrescent Knight itself is the rotten body of General Radahn, but given that it is the Knight of St. Trina, much like how Radahn was Miquella's consort, St. Trina likely saw to fashion the Putrescence into her ideal as well. A champion strong enough, knowing that if one could defeat it, they could also be the one to defeat Miquella and his consort. So with the idea that Miquella and St. Trina are one and the same, it makes a lot of sense that these similarities between the Putrescent Knight and Radahn would exist, a simulacra formed out of poison and the discarded bones at the bottom of a grave, a fitting mockery of the champion from her childhood. It's a really cool concept, and an interesting theory to say the least. Throughout all of Elden Ring, one of the most valuable items you can find in the overworld is a Larval Tear, the important item that allows you to respec your build, and where in the base game you would naturally come across many of these, the DLC has shaken it up quite a bit, hiding the Larval Tears behind these weird spirit grave sites. And if you've completed the DLC and wondered why you don't have any Larval Tears, well, there's a reason for that. That's because these Moonlight spirit sites only appear during the night, and more specifically, while the moon is in the sky. Now simply skipping the time to night will put you in that hour range, but if you're out adventuring and realize it's nighttime, even if you go to the correct spot as soon as the sun comes up, that grave site along with the Larval Tear will disappear. Now there are a total of 9 Larval Tears in the DLC, and I'll have a map of them on screen for you, so unfortunately they are not infinite, but between the 9 here and the main game, that's still quite a lot. One of the coolest reveals in my opinion of the DLC was Phase 2 of Messmer's fight, and the revelation of the Abyssal Serpent Shorn of Light. And when you actually get into the fight in Phase 2, you will see Messmer's transition into a giant snake, which is a really cool aspect of the fight, but things get weird when you actually take a close look at the snakes themselves. Some striking details that'll be noticed immediately is that, like Messmer, the snake is missing its right eye. It also has long strands of red hair, but the weirdest part are the many small red eyes running along its body. They can be seen on all parts of the snake, along with the red hair, and if you're able to look inside its mouth, you'll see that it is full of eyes as well. But this is different than the other miniature snakes that Messmer can summon. These snakes appear out of a black void that Messmer commands without actually transforming himself. Their design is very different, with 4 red eyes on their head, as well as many running along the body. These don't have the red hair, but have red burns all over them. The designs here are just so weird, and it really makes you wonder what the Abyssal Serpent actually is. But while we're on the topic of snakes, one place you might not have thought to find one is Bonnie Village, a place with some pretty horrifying lore, where the citizens were butchered by the potentates to become the innards of the living jars. The There's a lot going on here, but on the outskirts you'll find a tree with the headless remains of a figure who seems to be turning into one themselves, in which the player can acquire the "Oh Mother" gesture. But one thing this gesture might have distracted you from is right nearby under the coverings of the forest, you can find a massive shed snake skin. It's a very odd placement, and if we take a close look at the shed skin itself, due to the contrast of the way light is in the DLC, it's very hard to see, but the design doesn't match up with either of Messmer Snakes that we just talked about. In fact, this is almost identical to the shed skin found in the Church of Egle. The head is exactly the same. Now, unless it's just model reuse from the Church of Egle, this brings up some interesting implications. Was the ancient serpent cult part of the Land of Shadow? Were the gods that Egle devoured gods of that land? There's a rabbit hole to go down there, but for now I'll just leave it as an interesting little secret. A lot of you guys probably already know about this one, but I figured I'd include it anyway. And that is, did you know you can rematch the Divine Beast Dancing Lion? Yes, there are 2 of them in the game, and the second one has some tricks up its sleeve that I'll let you figure out as you go. But in order to actually get to this fight, you have to find this tucked away area in Rao Ruins, and it's this temple location here that you can see on the map. In order to get there, start from the Rao Ancient Ruins west side of Grace. Go up all the stairs, and then take a left until you get to the elevator at the end of the hall. Taking this elevator all the way up will bring you to an outdoor area, and take an immediate left. Looking out over the side, you'll see an area of rafters that you can jump down to. Here we have to do just a little bit of parkour. Jump down as far as you can to the lowest point of rafters and follow them all the way around the side of the building. Go down to the end of this segment and you will see it connect to an area with yet another elevator. This elevator will take you all the way to the top of the ruins, and out here you'll find another side of Grace. Now all you have to do is follow these stairs all the way to the bottom, and that little temple area will be off to the right. There is a guardian golem here that's going to shoot at you, but it's really not a problem. I really like that they included a rematch with this boss. Not only does it make sense in the setting, but they put a really fun twist on it, which I'm not going to spoil, but where this was most people's first boss they fought, I like that you get to fight it again after not only learning the cadence of the DLC bosses, but generally getting a lot stronger. Now you might have already known about this, but I'm sure there's quite a few of you that missed it, so I wanted to go ahead and talk about it. But those are 8 secrets in the Elden Ring DLC that you probably didn't know. And remember, if I showed you something new here, be sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe. Or if you have a secret that we haven't covered yet, definitely let me know down in the comments section so that we can keep this series going as long as possible. Either way though, I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I will catch you in the next one.